Hi everyone. So I am very excited today to share with you a speech from Olivia Taylor. I was at the Pixel Legacy conference yesterday and it was brilliant, really good, full of quite provocative ideas, full of quite generous sharing about the legacy we want to leave as educators. And there was a big theme around actually real change being needed. And then Olivia stood up and she gave what, and I've been around for quite a long time, as most of you know, and she gave what I can only describe as the most powerful speech I have ever heard in the world of education. I'm going to pass over to her now, but I hope you get as much out of this as I did.
Thank you. So my section of the conference was called disadvantaged. So this was written in response to that word. So sometimes we refer to young people from challenging backgrounds as disadvantaged. But when I hear the word myself, when I hear the word myself to describe my background or others, I immediately cringe. I understand its intention. It's meant as a term to encapsulate the amount of need a certain area, school or person has. However, as a term, it's quite harmful for young people. It's quite a sticky label, and it can make you feel doomed to a certain fate. I think of a child I think thinking of a child as disadvantaged treats them like they are lacking something within themselves, and that it's like a permanent state of being. You call a football team disadvantaged when they have a lower skill than another team. The answer is for them to train a bit harder. So if I don't like the word disadvantaged, what do I use? I personally use the word underserved, which points the emphasis back into society to help young people from challenging backgrounds, rather than the young person having to work to overcome disadvantage. A society must learn how to serve them. Words really do have power. So when I was writing this speech, I thought I could tell you about who I am and what I've achieved, how I went from council estate to Clare College, Cambridge. Or I could tell you about my work with the most disadvantaged young people in my community. But then I thought, it isn't really me you need to hear from, at least not as I am right now. So I've written to all of you, the educators and people who work with young people, from the perspective of my former self and what I think she might have said had she been given the opportunity to speak. So this is the piece I've called From the Little Girl Who Grew Up, to you, teachers, educators. From the little girl who grew up. From the little girl who duct taped her school shoes together because her mum didn't have the money for new ones, and the school rule said she couldn't wear trainers to school. She grew up to win awards that were presented in ceremonies at the House of Lords. She asks you to remember this the next time you see a child wearing the wrong school shoes, or maybe the wrong shirt or a skirt that's a bit too small. Maybe they're just being defiant or trying to be cool, or maybe they can't bear the shame of asking for help. Maybe this is their way of protecting their family. It was mine. I never meant to break the rules. I was doing the best I could. Please always assume the latter. From the little girl who went hungry over school holidays and who often skipped breakfast so that her younger siblings could eat, she grew up to attend formal meals all over the country. I ask you to remember this the next time a child isn't concentrating in your class or when you're speaking. Maybe they are simply not interested or lazy, or maybe the pains in their stomach and the fog in their head means today they just don't have the energy. I wanted to learn, but I really needed your patience and kindness. Rather than stern words, I think a biscuit would have fixed it. From the little girl who battled such a traumatic home life, she grew up to be loved and celebrated. Remember this the next time a child storms out of your class or swears at you. Don't take it personally. I didn't yet know what it means to be safe. It was my way of survival. From the little girl who didn't believe in herself, she now regularly shares her story. Remember that. The next time a child doesn't hand in their homework, maybe they are just unorganized and would rather be out playing with their friends. Or maybe they cried over it for 2 hours before giving up, or couldn't concentrate over the sound of their parents arguing. Maybe you should just ask them. You might be surprised by what they say. From the little girl who battled panic attacks daily, she grew up to find her place in this world. She asks that the next time a child refuses to get changed for PE, to think maybe they don't just want to get sweaty or ruin their hair, or maybe they have marks on their body they can't bear others to see. From the little girl who used to cry at maths and spellings as she coped with undiagnosed dyslexia, she found out that she grew up to be a University of Cambridge graduate. Next time a child isn't reaching their fullest potential, consider maybe it isn't through lack of trying. From the little girl to you, I wasn't my best. I wasn't perfect, but I was always trying my best. And from me, the woman, the youth worker, the Cambridge graduate, the person who battled and won, the adult who was not too long ago, that little girl. You have in your care hundreds, if not thousands, of little me's. I know this work is hard and sometimes unforgiving. I work with young people too. I know there are so many times I've acted in a less than perfect way. There are times all I've wanted to do is cry, to give in, give up. There are so many times I failed the children I had committed to caring for. They are wonderful, stubborn, brilliant, beautiful, difficult, incredible little beings. They know how to challenge me, to push every button and find every weakness anyone who works with young people knows. But there is no such thing as a bad child. With each smile, conversation, with each new day, as educators, you have the power to change, if not save, a life. To be the teacher a young person remembers for the right reasons. It's so important we don't label children as disadvantaged, bad, naughty, or worst of all, a lost cause. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And as the adults, we have a responsibility to break that cycle for them. If you haven't already, train up on trauma-informed approaches. It changed my work and my practice and my view of myself. And at the very minimum, remember there is no such thing as a bad. Or go one step further and think, is there even really such thing as a disadvantaged one? Only one that's been underserved. Thank you. You're muted.
Thank you so much, Olivia. Never get that mute thing right. You blew me away again. I want you to imagine, everyone, Olivia on a massive stage in Central Hall, just by the Houses of Parliament. The stage was huge, wasn't it, Olivia? And there's massive organ behind her. And she gave this speech to 500 educators, and she received the only, I should say, standing ovation of the day. And I think for very good reasons. So please take this, use this, reflect on this for your own practice, for the practice of your school. Use it in your inset days. Use it to put life into perspective, and just think about those labels that we put on children, and that there is no such thing as a bad child. Thank you so much, Olivia.